There are all kinds of Trump scandals that consume Washington, but one of the most impactful developments coming out of D.C. right now is a potential breakthrough on gun safety. The House recently passing 2 bills strengthening background checks, closing the loophole related to that infamous mass murder at a black church in Charleston.
The Charleston loophole is something all members of Congress should have the courage to change.
In the days after the Emanuel shooting, I was there in the community, dealing with their pain and loss, and America deserves better than this.
On this vote, the yeas are 228 and the nays are 198. The bill is passed.
Those 228 votes would close this loophole that many say paved the way for convicted felon Dylann Roof to buy a gun that he used for that mass murder which scarred America.
A gunman opens fire in a church, killing 9 people.
Among the victims was the church's pastor.
He had reloaded 5 different times. He just said, I have to do it.
This city is in mourning. The state is in mourning.
No one in this community will ever forget this night.
Still in a state of shock, trying to seek and find understanding where there is none.
The heart and soul of South Carolina was broken.
There is something particularly heartbreaking about a death happening in a place in which we seek solace and we seek peace.
And soon the ritual processing of another shooting turned to the gathering of the stark facts at that time about how easy it can be to pull one off. And Americans soon learned how Dylann Roof, a convicted felon, got his gun in the first place. The answer is as illogical as it is maddening. Roof's background check would have barred that gun store from selling him one. But under a very lax loophole, when the FBI results do not come back within 3 business days on the background check, felons who could not buy guns under law are automatically cleared to buy a gun. In other words, even though Congress already agreed on barring felons from buying those guns, they can still buy them if there's a delay in their background check. Now, that's what Roof did when his background check didn't arrive in time. A gun he used to murder 9 innocent people at the Emanuel AME Church in South Carolina. And members of Congress then offered their ritual grief and compassion. But they were speaking in dual roles, which is what I want to talk to you about tonight. They were speaking as representatives who, sure, grieve with their community, but also as lawmakers, meaning people who make laws. The laws that allowed a convicted felon like Dylann Roof to buy a gun that Congress already said, on record, no debate, he should never legally get to buy. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, at the time, said he was praying for the victims.
For what did you pray, may I ask?
For comfort and healing and understanding to those who have suffered in a way that most of us can never imagine. I don't know how they get through this, but if we all love them, they will.
And that love is certainly welcome. But public safety is never limited to just expressions of love or thoughts or prayers. We know that. So what do some of these senators say when it comes to implementing the law that they did pass that's supposed to bar felons from buying these very guns? Well, let me show you. There was an opportunity to close that very loophole, and GOP leaders blocked a floor vote on that issue. So I want us all, as we learn from what's happened, to keep that contrast in mind. As you recall, these senators denouncing the murderer, while knowing they then went on to block the very vote that would have prevented that murderer, that felon, from getting his hands on an instrument of murder.
The hateful and racist actions of one deranged man have changed 9 families forever.
Our hearts go out to the families who've been affected by this awful tragedy.
We should pray for the families who lost loved ones.
Public safety laws are to prevent that deranged man from getting his hands on a gun. And it was within 2 years of those prayers that these same senators blocked a vote on the bill to close this Charleston loophole. So when you go back to when there was a floor vote on another background check bill, this was back in 2013, take a look at those same senators you just saw voting it down.
Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Graham, no. Mr. McConnell, no. Senators voting in the negative. Cruz.
Most gun owners actually support these checks, but the NRA opposes them, and these senators' A ratings depend on picking the gun lobby over its members. The fact is, those are the votes that make it easier for felons to get guns, which have led to the shootings we've seen in churches and movie theaters or Navy yards, many of which would be less likely with stricter background checks, which is all part of this larger trend we're living through, where gun violence is killing more people per capita in the United States than any place on earth, more than 36,000 of us a year. So is this the same old story? Is anything different tonight? Yes. In this new Congress, there's a majority in the House to tighten up these gun background checks. And the last time there was a vote, we can tell you there was a majority in the Senate to do the same thing. If that sounds surprising, if you're used to hearing the opposite, if you hear these cynical pronouncements that say gun reform, it's impossible or it's not supported in this Congress, we'll stop and think about it. Maybe that's what the NRA wants people to think, or maybe that's because some of the narrators have normalized D.C. obstruction. Look at this. When a majority of senators voted to pass these tougher background checks, some of the headlines said the Senate rejected background checks. But actually, the news was that a majority in the Senate succeeded in a coalition to pass background checks with 54 votes that Republicans filibustered. So that's not a story about gun reform failing to get a majority. It's a story about a majority blocked by Senate rules and a leader who deploys them with an iron grip, who recently explained why bills with lots of support still don't get floor votes.
Because I get to decide what we vote on.
He gets to decide. Now, tonight we asked Senator McConnell's office whether he will decide to hold a vote on that bill that I've been reporting on that the House sent over on the background checks. And tonight his office says they don't have any announcements beyond this week's schedule. No vote yet. But McConnell is facing a Congress that is increasingly united against him on these background checks, and a caucus of senators who, however genuinely they may feel compassion for victims of the shootings, are voting down the most basic bills to keep guns out of the hands of convicted felons who carry out these shootings. Now, in D.C., this is not considered one of the top stories right now. But given the House vote and given the rate of mass murder and the preventable part that could be played if we had these background checks enforced, maybe this should be one of the top stories in Washington right now.
I don't know how they get through this, but if we all love them, they will.
Mr. Graham, no.
Our hearts go out to the families.
Mr. McConnell, no.
And we should pray for the families who lost loved ones.
Senators voting in the negative. Cruz.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.